Pine Barrens of New Jersey sprawl across 1,000,000 acres of whispering pines, tangled bogs, and sandy trails. A wilderness that feels like a living relic, older than the asphalt veins that dare to pierce its edges. In the spring of 2009, Nolan Faraday, a search and rescue veteran whose life had weathered its share of storms, stepped into this shadowed expanse to find Thomas Guile, a 34-year-old hiker lost to its depths. What began as a routine mission unraveled into a nightmare of claw-scarred trees, scattered bones, and a creature that mocked the boundaries of reason. The authorities stamped it a bear attack, sealed the files with bureaucratic haste, and turned their backs. But the truth festers in those woods, a primal dread that claws at the mind like a beast circling its prey. This isn't a tale to dismiss with daylight's comfort. It's a plunge into the wild's abyss, where the air thrums with menace, the earth cradles a ledger of the devoured, and the shadows stretch far beyond New Jersey's pines. Welcome to the forbidden excavation of the Pine Barrens' darkest secret, and the chilling echoes that resonate across a nation's untamed corners. The descent begins into the heart of the Barrens. Nolan Faraday was 38 that year, a man whose wiry frame and sharp hazel eyes belied a history of false starts. Jobs abandoned, relationships frayed, a life tangled like the underbrush he now navigated. Yet he trusted his sense of direction, a compass forged through 8 years of search and rescue work across forests and mountains. He'd pulled lost souls from snowdrifts in the Adirondacks, tracked wanderers through Maine's fog-choked woods, each case a thread in a tapestry of stubborn resilience. In April 2009, a call came across his desk. Thomas Guile, a photographer with a penchant for wildlife, had vanished in the Pine Barrens 2 days prior. His girlfriend, Rachel, last saw him near their campsite in Wharton State Forest, assuming he'd return from a photo trek within an hour. When morning broke without him, she dialed the authorities, her voice trembling through the delay. Nolan knew that lag was a bad omen. Time was a predator's ally in the wild, but he packed hope alongside his gear. A folding knife, a crackling radio, a worn map, and a belief he could outsmart whatever nature threw his way. No gun, local law discouraged it unless the threat was undeniable, and this seemed a simple lost hiker case. He arrived at dawn, the sky a bruised canopy of gray pressing down on the forest. The Pine Barrens greeted him with a paradox. A sprawling wilderness of dense pines and open clearings, beautiful in its desolation yet laced with an unease that prickled the skin. The air carried the damp musk of earth, the sharp bite of resin, and a faint, sour tang Nolan couldn't place. Locals spun tales of cranberry bogs and Revolutionary War ghosts, but beneath the charm lurked whispers of missing hunters, strange tracks, a presence you could feel like a weight on your chest. A small team assembled. Steve, a lean volunteer with a gallows humor, 2 rangers whose names blurred in the haze of the task, and Nolan, leading the charge. They fanned out along the trails near Guile's last sighting, calling his name into a void that swallowed sound. The pines stood like silent sentinels, their needles blanketing the ground in a hush, their branches knitting a ceiling that filtered the light into a dim, greenish gloom. The first day stretched long and heavy, the forest yielding little. They checked trunks for scratches, listened for rustles, scanned the underbrush for signs. A snapped twig, a dropped lens cap. By mid-afternoon, Steve's voice cut through the stillness. Over here, beneath a thicket of scrub pine, Guile's camera bag lay abandoned, its straps snared in brambles, the canvas scuffed but intact. No blood, no torn earth, just a bag discarded with an eerie nonchalance. Nolan crouched, tracing its edges with gloved fingers, the silence pressing harder now. Steve cracked, "What, a bear steal his tripod too?" But the laugh died in Nolan's throat, forced and brittle. The team exchanged glances, the weight of the find settling over them like damp fog. The woods felt alive, watchful, as if they'd crossed an unseen line. Back at camp that night, the fire's glow did little to thaw the chill. Nolan traced the map under a flickering lantern. Giles coordinates a pinprick in a sea of green. The forest loomed beyond the light, its edges blurring into a wall of shadow. He didn't sleep well. The pines whispered too loudly, their rustle a chorus of secrets he couldn't decipher. The second day, whispers turned to warnings. Dawn broke cold and gray, the team splitting into pairs to stretch their reach. Nolan paired with Mara, a park ranger whose sharp eyes and clipped words cut through the morning haze. She moved like a shadow, boots silent on the spongy earth, her radio a lifeline clipped to her belt. Nolan followed, his map crinkling against the quiet, his breath fogging in the chill. The forest deepened as they pressed past the well-trodden paths, the pines closing in, their branches clawing at his jacket, snagging the fabric with skeletal fingers. The air thickened, mossy decay, wet pine, a metallic hint that lingered like a memory of rust. It was a labyrinth of repetition. Every tree a twin of the last, every trail a mirror, disorienting even to a man who prided his bearings. By midday, they stumbled into a clearing, a stark circle of bare earth, 30 feet wide, ringed by pines that leaned inward as if guarding it. The ground was littered with bones. Deer ribs arched like broken bows, rabbit skulls glinting white, and something larger. A femur, perhaps elk, though the barrens held no elk Nolan knew of. The bones glowed in the dim light, bleached by a sun that rarely breached the canopy, their surfaces smooth yet scarred. The air stank, a sour rot that clawed at his throat, mingled with that metallic edge he'd caught before. Mara muttered, "Coyotes," her tone flat, nudging them onward with a jerk of her head. But Nolan lingered, kneeling beside the scatter. The arrangement wasn't right, too haphazard for scavengers, who'd leave gnaw marks and drag trails, yet too disordered for human hands, who'd stack or bury. His fingers traced shallow grooves on the larger bone, symmetrical, deliberate, like a blade's caress, though no hunter would waste time on such marks. He pocketed the thought, a splinter under his skin, and followed Mara without a word. The forest grew quieter as they pressed on, the chatter of birds fading, the hum of insects silenced. It was a stillness that pressed against the eardrums, a void where sound should have been. Nolan's pulse quickened, though he masked it with a forced calm, his boots crunching louder in the absence. Mara felt it too, her shoulders tensed, her pace quickened, though she said nothing. By late afternoon, they crossed a stream, its waters sluggish and dark, reflecting the pines like a mirror of despair. The quiet broke with a rustle. A squirrel, Nolan told himself, though it didn't scamper like one. He glanced back, seeing only shadows, but the hairs on his neck stood like needles. That night, the team regrouped, the mood heavier than the damp air. Steve's group had found Giles' hiking boot near the stream, its laces sodden, the sole worn to match his size. "People don't just lose one boot," Steve said, his grin gone, replaced by a tight-lipped unease. The others nodded, their eyes darting to the trees. Nolan sat by the fire, the boot's image burned into his mind. A lone sentinel of a man unmoored. The grooves on that bone flickered in his thoughts, a riddle he couldn't solve, while the forest pressed closer, its silence a living thing that watched them through the flames. The third day, the beast breaks free. Day 3 dawned with a chill that seeped into the bones, the sky a slate of clouds that smothered the light. Nolan and Mara ventured to the old fire breaks, forgotten scars from decades past, where the forest thickened into a fortress of shadow. The ground turned spongy, moss sinking underfoot, the air heavy with the musk of wet pine and a faint, rancid whiff that twisted Nolan's gut. They were miles from the others, the radio static a frail thread to the world beyond. The trees loomed taller here, their trunks gnarled and ancient, their branches weaving a canopy that choked the day into dusk. They found the campsite mid-morning, a green tent sagging in the gloom, its stakes half pulled, supplies scattered like a storm's leavings. A portable stove lay tipped over, its burner cold, a canteen glinting dully in the dirt. Then Nolan saw the blood, splattered across the canvas in wild arcs, smeared into the soil, crusted into the bark of a nearby pine. The scene screamed chaos, a frenzy etched into the earth as if something had torn through in a blind rage. Mara gripped her radio, whispering words lost to the wind, her knuckles white. Nolan stepped closer, his breath shallow, and found Giles' wallet beneath the tense wreckage. The driver's license stared up, a man with a crooked smile, unprepared for this end. Adrenaline buzzed under Nolan's skin, sharpening his senses as he slipped it into his pocket. Mara's scream shattered the quiet, a sharp, guttural cry that jolted him upright. He ran, boots pounding the earth, and found her frozen over a body. It was Guile, or what remained. His torso gaped open, ribs splayed like the teeth of a broken comb, his face pale and glassy, eyes wide with a terror that lingered beyond death. His legs ended in ragged stumps below the knees, the flesh torn as if gnawed by something relentless. Nolan turned away, while searing his throat, the air thick with the coppery tang of blood and the sour rot of decay. Mara radioed base, her voice tight and professional, a mask over her fear. They should have fled then, should have run until the forest released them. But Nolan's stubbornness, a flaw or a strength he couldn't tell, rooted him. He circled the body, searching for tracks, for anything to make sense of the ruin. The footprints stopped him cold, massive, twice his boot size, too long and narrow, toes ending in deep, claw-like punctures that pierced the soil. They circled the campsite, overlapping in a predatory dance, pacing with a purpose that chilled him. Mara's voice rose, urging him to leave, but he followed them, drawn deeper into the woods like a moth to a flame he couldn't see. The trail led to another clearing, a massacre unveiled in the dim light. 3 bodies sprawled like broken dolls. Steve, his chest torn open, his grimace frozen in death. 2 rangers Nolan barely knew, their radios smashed, weapons vanished into the gloom. The air reeked of rot and metal, the ground scarred with those same monstrous prints. Mara sobbed, her composure shattered, her flashlight trembling in her grip. Nolan's mind spun. Something hunted them, something vast, cunning, and close. A low hum vibrated through the trees, deep and resonant, like a cello strung with despair. It wasn't wind, wasn't machinery. It was alive, thrumming from the shadows. Mara swung her flashlight, slicing the dark, and there it stood, towering on 2 legs, hunched yet immense, at least 9 feet of sinew and menace. Its body gleamed with matted fur, slick with sweat or something darker, patchy with scars that spoke of battles older than this one. Its head was canine yet grotesque, a wolf's snout stretched wide, bristling with jagged teeth that dripped saliva, eyes glinting with a cold, predatory gleam. Its limbs were muscular, too long, ending in claws, hooked, obscene, twitching as if eager to rend. It stared, unblinking, its gaze a weight that pinned them, sizing them up like meat on a scale. Mara screamed again, a raw, primal sound, and bolted. The creature lunged after her, its speed unnatural, a blur of muscle and malice that split the air. Nolan froze, his breath caught, then ran the opposite way, weaving through the pines, his flashlight bouncing wildly against the dark. Her screams echoed, sharp and fading, then cut off, a silence that clawed at his soul worse than any sound. Branches lashed his face, roots snared his boots, but he pressed on, lungs burning, until he stumbled upon an old fire tower. Its rusted ladder bit his palms as he climbed, the metal groaning under his weight. From the platform, the forest stretched endless under a cold, waxing moon, a sea of black that swallowed hope. His radio spat static, a cruel jest in the void, its signal lost to the wild. The creature appeared below, its head tilting as it regarded him, its guttural rasp rising. A wet, dying breath that wasn't quite animal, wasn't quite human. It climbed, claws scraping metal in a grating shriek that set his teeth on edge, each rung bending under its bulk. Nolan's hands shook, his knife useless against this thing. Desperation seized him. He tore a plank from the platform, its edges splintered and jagged, and stabbed downward as it neared. The wood struck its shoulder, sinking deep, and it snarled, a cry of pain and fury that shook the tower. It lost its grip, falling with a sickening thud, the ground trembling beneath it. It rose, limbs twisting unnaturally as it reset a dislocated joint, and glared up one last time, its eyes burning into his, before retreating into the shadows, swallowed by the forest's maw. The aftermath, a truth entombed. Dawn broke gray and cold, the authorities arriving in a flurry of dust and urgency, guided by Nolan's garbled radio pleas and the fleeting flare he'd fired into the sky. They found Mara's body near the campsite, her throat torn open, her flashlight shattered beside her. Steve and the rangers lay where they'd fallen, their deaths a tableau of violence the forest refused to explain. The footprints remained, stark and undeniable, etched into the soil like a signature, but the creature was gone, melted into the pines as if it had never been. The official report came swift and tidy. Bear attack, a rogue predator, case closed. Nolan didn't argue. Who'd believe the truth when he barely believed it himself? He kept Giles' camera bag, developing the film weeks later in a dim basement darkroom. The last photo showed it, a blur of fur and teeth mid-motion, caught in a frame too small to hold its horror. He buried it in a drawer, a secret he couldn't share, a weight he couldn't shed. But the Pine Barrens weren't an anomaly. They were a thread in a vast, unraveling tapestry. In 1994, Carson Dillinger, a private investigator, tracked Lena Foxcroft near New Mexico's Wheeler Peak, finding her slumped against a tree, torso mangled, her journal scrawling, "It watches from the shadows." The creature, long, sinewy, with backward bent limbs and jagged teeth, chased him through a ravine, its tracks vanishing into the dusk. In 2016, Graham DeRose faced a clawed nightmare in Colorado's Collegiate Peaks, bones stacked with glass shards marking Lyle Arnett's end, the forest's silence a shroud over the truth. Kenton Russell, in Idaho's Sawtooth Wilderness in 2018, uncovered Darrell Henson's butcher cabin, Lucas and Brandon's remains among a pit of bones, the drifter's rasping confession chilling the air. Nolan Trevors, in Illinois' Shawnee National Forest in 2013, fought Eric Haggard, saving Leah Anders from a cabin of blood and tools, a pit of 7 skeletons his legacy. Adrian Shaw, in Montana's Glacier National Park in 2015, shot Roy Dandridge, freeing Melissa Porter from his shack. Carter Porter's slit throat a grim cost. Wesley Holt, in Utah's Canyonlands in 2013, battled the Murdoch brothers, Cain and Elias, Henry Callaway's mutilated body one of 12 in their ritualistic lair. Roger Talmadge, in Minnesota's J. Cook State Park in 2015, cuffed Henry Blackwood. Dylan and Kayla's remains surfacing from a campsite of ash and knives. Elias Corvin, in Arkansas's Ouachita National Forest in 1992, fled a wolf-headed beast, Charles Mercer's wallet among a cave of bones, its rancid breath a memory he couldn't shake. The pattern unraveled, a wilderness alive with dread. These aren't isolated horrors. They're stitches in a fabric of terror woven across North America's wild places. Footprints too vast, too deliberate, twice a man's size, clawed and pacing. Bones arranged with purpose, piles topped with glass, circles of charred remains, femurs grooved by unseen blades. Campsites torn apart, tents shredded, supplies scattered, blood splattered like a painter's rage. The evidence spans decades, from New Jersey's pines to Utah's canyons, Colorado's peaks to Arkansas's hollows. Native tales whisper of wendigos born of greed, skinwalkers cursed into flesh, their hunger a shadow over the land. Old logs tell of trappers vanishing in the 1800s, their camps bloodied, their screams lost to the wind. In 1923, a Minnesota trapper burned his cabin after a dog-faced thing dragged his partner into the night, his journal a relic of dread. In 1997, Arizona hikers disappeared near Sierra Ancha, claw marks their only epitaph, the site sealed without explanation. What stalks these woods? A creature, ancient, relentless, its form a mockery of nature's design, its canine jaws and human cunning echo across states, a lineage of terror that defies biology. Or is it men, warped by isolation into predators of their own kind? Henson, Haggard, Blackwood, the Murdochs, hunters who turned wilderness into killing grounds? The caves, the pits, the scattered bones, their ledgers, tallying a debt we refuse to acknowledge. Authorities bury the truth, bear attacks, cougar maulings, exposure, a litany of lies to shield us from the abyss. Why? Because to admit it is to unravel our illusion of dominion. We're not the apex here. Something else reigns, its claws scraping the earth, its eyes glinting in the dark. The Pine Barrens hum with it still. Hikers vanish, 2 in 2010 near Batstow, their tent shredded, no bodies found. A family of 3 in 2017, their campfire cold, their gear strewn like confetti. Minnesota's Boundary Waters, Montana's Absaroka Beartooth, Texas' Big Bend. Each harbors its own whispers, its own footprints, its own silences. The wild doesn't forget. It waits. Picture yourself as Nolan, perched on that fire tower's edge, the creature's rasp rising from below, its claws glinting in the moonlight. Would you climb down, flashlight trembling, to chase the truth through the pine's labyrinth, knowing what waits? Or would you stay, clinging to the rusted metal, praying the dawn erases the nightmare you've glimpsed? And if you stood in that clearing, the hum of something vast vibrating through the trees, would you step closer, drawn to the unknown, or flee, hoping it never finds you? Your choice might reveal how deep you dig before the wild claims its due. The Pine Barrens endure, their trails open to the brave, the reckless, the naive. The beast, or whatever it was, lurks, its presence a shadow over the pines, its hunger a rhythm older than us. From New Jersey to New Mexico, Idaho to Arkansas, the wilderness cradles secrets we're not ready to face. Next time you wander too far, listen. The snap of a twig, the hum of something alive, the silence that isn't empty, is out there watching, waiting, and it knows you're alone.